Hello.
Hello, Kellen.
It took a minute to get here.
Yes,
So
here
yeah,
we are.
welcome to our next speaker in track two. We have first off, Mauricio José Guzmán Chavez is full professor of the anthropological studies program at El Colegio de San Luis in Mexico. He took his doctorate in political sociology at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, Brazil, with the thesis Skin Goes Deepest, Biocosmetic Society in the Era of Biodiversity, author of books Undying Nature, A Political Ecology of Biodiversity Conservation in Brazil and Mexico, and a book in press, Conservation and Regulated Use of Peyote in Mexico, Perspective Study on Legal, Cultural, and Environmental Issues. He was also co-editor of Nature in Context Towards a Mexican Political Ecology and In Search of Ecotourism, Case Studies of Sustainable Tourism in Mexico, Costa Rica, Brazil, and Australia. He's published numerous prominent articles in Latin American journals, focusing on socio-environmental conflicts and social participation in protected areas management, mining projects, ecotourism, and ceremonial use of psychoactive substances. He belongs to Mexico's National Researcher System, Level 2, and to the National Science and Technology Council. So our other speaker is Dr. José Noyola Cherpitel, is a psychiatrist who graduated from Universidad Autónoma de San Luis Potosí in 1994. He has a degree in psychoanalysis from the Association Regiomonte de Psychoanalysis and became a member of the International Psychoanalytical Association in 2000. He's practiced psychiatry, psychotherapy, and psychoanalysis privately since 2001 in San Luis Potosí, and has personal experiential knowledge of peyote since 2011 in San Luis Potosí's Huiracuta Desert. He also has personal experiential knowledge of ayahuasca through the practice of Santo Daime in San Luis Potosí since 2012. My name is Kellen Thomas. I'm a psychiatric pharmacist and professor here in unceded Ohlone land in Oakland, California. And I've been posting science articles through Sunday Science series with Chacruna. And I'm very fascinated by our topic, which is a deep dive and discussion into potential therapeutic use of peyote among non-natives in Mexico. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Jose.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be carrying the burden of the talk, but Mauricio is here with me because we did this work together. Let me say that Mauricio is the mastermind behind this project, and I'm just a helping hand here to do the psychiatric work and evaluation. This project started with the idea that if people are to be healed or cured by the use of sacred plants, we must determine first that, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes,
yeah,
we can.
Yeah, and if we have first to determine if they are ill of something, if they are not ill after they received the benefit of the plants. So that was introduction. But our methodology was to let the users themselves talk by themselves. So what we did was to interview them and make a mix of a psychiatric approach and anthropological approach. Now, we chose the Tipi ceremony because recently, in the last years, the Tipi ceremony has began to flourish, and even if it comes from North American tradition, there are a number of people that are attending these meetings. We also want to highlight that our work, it's a pioneer work in evaluating psychiatrically the users, and there are no previous written accounts of evaluation in Mexico of Mexicans using the Tipi ceremony.
With the
Introduction. We now go to the next week. So the highlight of our work, again, is that we're going to take into account the narrative of the users. All of them live in the state of San Luis Potosí, and they are all members of a ritual nucleus information linked to Dennis McFerrin, who is a Rodman of Cheyenne ethnic origin, and he goes by the name of Sarah. And last, to make our scientific, we were endorsed by the Colegio de San Luis, and this is an ongoing project. One central question towards an action that we're following is, how do individuals assume and talk about therapeutic potentialities of peyote within the ritual of the Tipi? And in parallel, how do they contrast or value this benefit of other therapeutic resources, other substances with psychoactive properties, and even in relation to other forms of ritual or recreational peyote consumption? This is because the group of persons who studied, they have ample experience in the use of multiple substances, as you will see, and this is part of their diagnosis. So what we did psychiatrically was to interview them and to, wait, this is going a little slow. Okay. So our hypothesis is that the Tipi ceremony, and therefore use peyote, receive a recognizable benefit. But to demonstrate such benefit, we must assess, one, if the subjects have a diagnosis of psychiatric disorder or a psychoactive substance use disorder, and if this disorder was present prior to the participation in the Tipi ceremonies. And last, if after their participation in such ceremonies, that diagnosis has disappeared or been attenuated. This is the Tipi, or subjects and methods. So this observational study, naturalistic interview, and we were constrained by the COVID-19. So a couple of consecutive cases between 21, and all the subjects who accepted the interview, we did the interview with them, but our plans are to go further in the future for the next sample and to follow them in time. We use the mini international neuropsychiatric interview Spanish version for the DSM-4. We use the OMS assist and the personal diagnostic psychiatric interview with me. The mini international interview, it's an interview and developed in France and in the University of Tampa some time ago, and also was updated in the year 2000 to be validated in Spanish. So this instrument determines the presence of 16 mental disorders with specific activity of 85% and a predicted value of 75%. The assist interview is alcohol, tobacco, and substance use screening test, and it's a short interview, 5 to 10 minutes long, just to make some diagnosis to go from there. So here we have a group of the interview, and here are our findings. This is the most important part, the results. So the first subject, 38 years of age, female, divorced. She suffers from bipolar disorder type 1 and a non-specified eating disorder. She's very overweight. She's been 2 years participating, and she's attended 5 ceremonies. And her actual psychiatric diagnosis is she's an active bipolar disorder type 1 and active in her eating disorder. Our second subject is 49 years of age, He has bipolar disorder type 2, hoarding disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality. He's one of the more long-lasting members of the group. He's been 10 years into Tipi ceremonies, and he's attended about 100 ceremonies. He is in remission of all of his diagnosis. The third subject, male, married. He used to have a severe multiple substance abuse. He's participated for 11 years, has participated in 10 ceremonies, about 10 per year, and his disorder is in remission. Our fourth subject is a female, 51 years of age, married. She has several diagnoses. She suffers from recurring severe major depressive disorder with suicide attempts. She has alcohol abuse, disorder, panic attacks, and agoraphobia. Participated for 3 years in 4 ceremonies, and she has had a spectacular remission. She also used to have many somatic illnesses. This woman has had surgery 27 times in her life, and she's been well for the last 4 since her first TP. Our fifth subject is a masculine of 47 years. He had cannabis abuse disorder, alcohol abuse disorder, tobacco dependency disorder, personality, and he suffered a single episode of major depression in 2004. He's been attending the TP for 10 years and has been there for about 20 ceremonies. He's a cannabis and alcohol and are in remission, and he's still dependent on tobacco and very paranoid personality. The sixth subject is a female, 32 years of age, married. She used to have alcohol. She's been participating for 7 years. She's active members. She's attended around 60 ceremonies, and now she's in remission of her alcohol disorder. The seventh subject, 38 years of age, masculine, single, the only one that doesn't have any diagnosis that I could come up, and he's attended around 15 ceremonies in 11 years. He goes seldomly, but he has attended enough ceremonies to be in the group and to be knowledgeable of how it works. The eighth subject is 52 years of age. He's the eldest of the group. Male, divorced. He had a severe alcohol dependence disorder, and he has participated for 7 years, and he's attended around 50 ceremonies, and he is now in complete remission of his alcohol dependence. The ninth subject, 28 years of age, masculine, single. He used to have multiple substance abuse disorder and bipolar disorder type 2. He's been participating for 4 years, 30 ceremonies, and both his diagnoses in remission. The 10th subject is 35 years of age, female, divorced. She used to have recurrent major depressive disorder and alcohol abuse disorder, but from 4 years and 20 ceremonies that she's attended, she's actually in remission. And the last subject, 43 years of age, masculine, married, used to have also multiple substance and schizophreniform disorder that was, but he actually is in remission. About how our subjects describe their own experience. So the majority of the interviewed subjects stated that they had previous experiences with psychoactive substances beginning their trajectory in the consumption of peyote at the TP meetings. The use of a great diversity of substances was reported, among which alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, cocaine, acids, amphetamine, and even ayahuasca and peyote stand out. What is relevant is that this consumption was carried out in recreational context, lacking any type of ritual preparation or ceremonial practice. Even when they used peyote, they reported having consumed it just to get drunk. The period in their life was characterized particular crises of depression, family conflicts, and states of social anomie, unemployment, work problems, anger fits, frustration, constant anger, and drug problems. And they perceive themselves as isolated, broken social relationships, and without a goal in life. Their emotional imbalance, they themselves believed it to be caused by affective deficits within their families, by traditional gender roles and the concomitant machismo, which is the submission of women to men, and alcoholism as a sign of virility, the little or no attention received from parents, and accompanying this, a lack of basic personal discipline, lack of morality, lack of and lack of values. In any case, for many of the interviewees, the path of drugs led them in fortuitous, magical, or hazardous ways to get in touch with people who were already of the ritual use of peyote. And this in turn led them to start seeing peyote in a way. Now, their stories. In touching words or subjects shared vividly and in detail, the differing experiences they had had at the Tipi ceremonies, but in particular, they spent more time explaining their first experience. As researchers, we are aware of the recurrence in their stories of visual metaphors to express their amazement translated into joy and happiness for everyone, or at times strong lives and or know that they were losing, but the veil they had worn and had not allowed them to recognize who they were, nor the value of their family relationships. One subject reported having discovered that his vision was that of a color-blind person, had seen everything in shades of gray, and his life had been dominated by an obsessive duty and tireless effort to earn money and have things. And now that he can see the colors of life again, his own words, he is free of obsessing about work and money. Yet another subject insisted on the question of focus. In his appreciation, his life was somehow out of focus, overwhelmed by what he felt as external pressure from his family, society, to be what he really did not want to be. In this case, he told us the peyote helped him to focus, to have confidence in himself. The visual metaphor refers, in our case, to the act of seeing relationships and situations in everyday life with different eyes. As Soren Kierkegaard said, the true voyage of discovery is not about discovering new landscapes, but to see the same landscapes with new eyes. Thus, our interviewed subjects stated that they had cured, healed, or understood their illness and sufferings at the moment that they were able to see the cause of their frustrations, and at that moment forgive themselves from their past wrongdoings, and also forgive others for the harm received from them. This is a highlight of our study. This is a common all the subjects, that forgiveness is the path to the cure. Now we'll talk about containment, security, and discipline that the TP provide to attend it. Our research is oriented to contribute to the discussion about therapeutic potentials of peyote in ritual and ceremonial contexts. Our particularity have studied middle-class Mexicans from the city. They are non-native individuals, and they participate in an imported native ritual, which is characterized by a high degree of formalities. Tipi ceremonies can be classified as disciplinary rituals. They are guided by a strict observation of bodily behaviors, energy management and circulation, and precise moments in the sequence of presentation of the sacred elements, which are the peyote, the water, the tobacco, the fire, the cedar, and food. The interviewee participants insisted rigidly that the ritual must be carried out to the letter as indicated by the chiefs who passed down the tipi. For example, songs from other traditions are not allowed, nor songs that are not specifically from the tipi. And you have to put cedar on the fire every time something goes the wrong way. For instance, moving in the opposite direction to the accepted one, or speaking when you're not allowed. Participants seated on the floor throughout, this is very tiring. And if they need to vomit in front of, not go out to urinate except when allowed by. Two interviewees noted that these rules prevent many persons from returning to a second ceremony, but for our subjects, precisely what they value, since they were not acquainted with discipline, and it is what they always wanted. Another characteristic of the tipi is the amount of peyote that is used and the protection provided by the tipi as an enclosed setting. You can eat all the peyote you want. In practice, there are strict limits to the actual amount each person eats. Participants self-regulate themselves by admonishments from the Radman and other elders, the number of times it is offered, and each person can eat only when it's their turn. All these emphasize that it is used in small amounts and it is actually just one of the tools of the ritual. The idea of containment, of protection, as an enclosed set, is very important. Many of our were acquainted with Huicholi ceremonies that are out in the open field. And there one is exposed to like the environment, the wind, the cold, the jokes. So in the tipi, everything is concentrated and well-defined. And although you are exposed to everyone's view, because everyone sits in a circle with the fire in the center, this helps you to concentrate and pay attention. In the Huichol ceremonies, which are very beautiful, but there's only one person singing, the maracame, and he sings throughout the ceremony. In the tipi, everyone that participates sings. Other aspects of the tipi refer to the imaginaries of the spirituality from an ancestral source. The process of healing is greatly enhanced because of the city people have imagined of the ancestral religions. So it's a very powerful resource psychologically. Also, the getting involved in the preparation of the stage, like lifting the tipi, and it's a way in the affectivity is guided as a process of personality, and there's a reconstruction of affective family ties. There is also a discovery and emergence of a new community, and finally, a shared dialogue is created in the community. We're going to show the results of our study. We made 11 interviews, 4 women and 7 men, aged between 28 and 52 years of age, 3 single, 3 divorced, and only one of the interviewees did not have any psychiatric or substance use diagnosis prior to their participation in the ceremonies. This suggests, being conclusive, that the majority of participants at these ceremonies did so looking for a way to heal from their suffering. The results of the interviews of the psychiatric for the ceremonies are these. Each more than one diagnosis, as you saw in the previous results. So we have 4 multiple substance use disorder, 3 major depression, 3 alcohol abuse disorder, 2 bipolar type 2, 1 bipolar type 1, 1 schizophreniform disorder, 1 alcohol dependence disorder, one tobacco dependence disorder, somatization disorder, hypochondriasis, panic attack, agoraphobia, hoarding disorder, eating disorder, and unspecified personality disorder, and obsessive compulsivity. Most of the subjects at present, after their participation in the TP, are asymptomatic, and this is particularly clear with regard to multiple substance abuse and alcohol abuse. Those interviewed with depression and type 2 bipolar disease are asymptomatic too. This represents an overall improvement of approximately 85% of the sample. Therefore, the answer to our research question is that a favorable change can be demonstrated in the mental health of the at TP ceremonies. In order to interpret these positive results, it's important to consider the cultural, and we that in this case it's a process of secondary socialization in which discipline, attention, and an attitude of service of cooperation develop into an effective emotional reorientation that is bonded by a therapeutic community. All the members use peyote during ceremonies. They don't use it anymore as recreational or to have experiences. They respect it as a sacred plant. And overall, there's a deep sense of family and collective spirituality. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. Fascinating. So first question I have is, it seems like most people have done about 10 ceremonies per year. Is that right?
The ones who are more active, yes.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
they engage themselves into this ritual as a form of life.
Mm-hmm. And do they have, so you mentioned that sort of building like a community and a group structure. Do they have people have a lot of contact outside of ceremonies as well in this group?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. This is a group that is open. People come in and out of it. But let's say like the core members of the group are the ones we interview.
Got it. So we have a question about, many warn that people with bipolar, may have a manic episode, or, there's a lot of concern. But given that multiple participants in the ceremony you just presented had bipolar 1 and 2 and had some reduction of symptoms, you think this opens the door for future research or clinical trials on bipolar disorder with peyote?
Well, this is an affirmative yes. Of course, it's only anecdotal. That's why we pretend to follow this group to expand to more persons and also go to other groups in Mexico to make this a long-standing prospective study. But I can answer you as a colleague because I know for sure, because these persons are my personal patients. Mm-hmm. So they take their psychiatric medication regularly, and they also attend the Tipi. Mm-hmm. I did not follow this into this part of the study. It's too early to do it, but several of the members are my patients, and I know them profoundly, and I have followed their evolution. But they have taken their medication when they have needed it.
Okay. Another question, does individual or collective consumption have implications for healing experiences, likewise in a ritual or non-ritual way? How do you feel like those elements contribute?
This is an excellent question, and it was answered by the interviewees themselves. Mm-hmm. Several of them describe the dynamic of the TP as the following. You are there to pray for the health or the well-being of one person, who is the person who asks for the TP. That person is called the sponsor. So all the other persons who attend know in advance that the prayer will be for the sponsor of what the sponsor asks. Throughout the night, tipis are carried out always during the night, throughout the night, by the different steps that the tipi has, and by the effect of the peyote. The praying for one person becomes the praying for all of the members, and through them for all their families, and through their families for the whole humankind. Because the basic process that repeats itself in every ceremony is going from the individual to the collective, and identifying yourself only as human beings with the same frailties, the same weaknesses, the same sufferings. And so by praying for the health or the relationship of another person, you are involved in your own disease, in your own relationships, and by extension, as I said, to the whole of humanity. So it's always a collective experience. For them, there is no like individual healing separate from the group healing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question, have you been able to associate the regularity of use with any features? And do you have any thoughts on therapeutic potentials of peyote for independent, non-native use, not outside of a TP context?
Well, thank you for that question. I have thought about it, but it's a complex endeavor. We do this non-funded by anyone. This is a spontaneous happening. I'm there by historical reasons. I came into being acquainted with some of the members of this group many years ago, and that's how I came to be their psychiatrist and their friend, and to learn about all they do. So I have thought about it. Now the TP is more organized because the people who attend it and get committed to it, they see it as a way of life. So they have regularity, they have discipline, they are a close community, they help each other, they support new members who come in suffering, and if anybody needs help. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
I'll ask
Go ahead.
a question I'm seeing here on the screen.
Yeah.
The person, maybe I didn't spell myself right. There are no marakame in these ceremonies. I just explained that the Huichol ceremonies are out in the open, and the marakame does all the singing. That's what I said. In the tipi, it's called the rod man, the man with the rod, the man with the stick, who leads, and it's a very different function than from a marakame. And everybody sings. It's a circle, and everybody has a chance to sing. They sing individually and collectively.
Great. Yeah, and then the other part of that question, I was asking about the origin of the peyote used in the ceremony, and how it's acquired, and
yes,
sourcing.
In each group, because we research other groups, although we only interviewed this one. Each group has the person who is designed to go and harvest the peyote. Here in the area where we live, it's abundant in peyote in wilderness. So there are many places that are known to peyote users. So they go and harvest it in a ceremonial way. They carry a ceremonial procedure, asking permission from the spirit guardians, and also other rituals for the harvest itself. But there's only one person who harvests it, and harvests it only for the ritual, when the ritual is going to be done.
Great. I had a request from Bia to see if Mauricio could share a little bit of his thoughts in Spanish for the Mexican audience, and then if you could translate, Jose, that'd be great.
Que hagas un comentario tú así general en español. Vía Lavate te mando a decir que lo hagas.
Sí, muy bien, muchas gracias. Pues nos da mucho gusto presentar este trabajo por primera vez se hace un análisis sobre los efectos terapéuticos del peyote. No existen trabajos dedicados a explorar estos temas, ni siquiera contamos con estudios sobre los efectos dentro de los grupos indígenas que tradicionalmente consumen peyote, como los Birrárica, ni con los Rarámuris, ni con los grupos Cora. Entonces creemos que estamos dando un paso muy importante para abrir esta temática y sumar a la discusión sobre los temas de regulación del peyote.
Okay, Mauricio says first that thank you, and that our study is the first one of this kind of trying to look into the effects of the peyote, but using a particular ceremony structure that is available to us, and it's different from other work that has been done, more work with the Huicholes and with other ethnics that exists already. But ours is going to be like a new beginning of a new field with the people from cities, middle-class Mexicans, which are not indigenous. There are a couple of questions I would like to answer.
Sure.
Nick Domitrovic says, how are the members of the TP viewed generally in the community? And could I comment of any possible stigma that is present, if any? This is a very good question. And no, they are not stigmatized. They are like regular people in regular life. And although they're quite open about their work in the TP, it doesn't carry them any difficulties, at least not major ones. Maybe there will be some gossiping around, you know, when people get to know, and the TP is like a strange thing in our territory. You know, the TP itself, it's gives way to comments. But in particular, they lead regular, normal lives. They have regular jobs, and they just carry on as everyone. And Fidel Costco asks, does peyote interact negatively with meds the participants may be on, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers? Are contraindications and optimal? This is an excellent question, and this is one of my personal pretensions on the long run, because as I'm their advisor, and I have tried let's say several runs through the years. At the beginning, I adhered to the, let's say, common wisdom of psychiatry that these medicines do not go along. So I would recommend to stop the medication, let's say the night before or 2 nights before, then do the ceremony, and then to take the medication again. After some trials, this didn't work out that well. And I tried just to leave them on the medication and see what happened with the peyote. And guess what? Nothing happens. You can take peyote and all the other medicines, and no harm will happen. This is a misconception of our previous knowledge or unknowledge. So the patients are well with the medication. They don't need to stop it. The peyote does not. It's not worse or better, or because also in the peyote tradition, on the other hand, not the medical, they say, no, don't take your medications because that'll stop the spirit of the plant from working. Nonsense. The spirit of the plant is so powerful because it's a spirit, you know, but it works anyway. So, but it's an excellent question, because the question I have myself, of course, with each case, I go carefully. I advise them. They accept, let's say, the risk, but nothing has happened in harm's way, and so I'm more confident that they work like in different neurotransmitter systems. So this is great news, because let's say that illness is in one place and the spirit maybe in another. Maybe.
Otro comentario.
Yeah.
Podría ser. Otra cuestión que debemos de considerar en nuestro estudio es que nos estamos centrando en la tradición transmitida por un
Rodman.
Cheyenne, que tiene una línea muy específica en términos de las cantidades de peyote que se consumen y a los aspectos de la disciplina. Pero hay otras influencias y otros grupos indígenas presentes en México que tienen una forma distinta de consumir peyote dentro del Tipi, y eso es algo que debemos de estudiar.
Oh yes, what Mauricio says is very important, and it makes an amendment of what I just said. In these ceremonies that our subjects have participated, they all follow just one Rodman, so they have just one tradition from the north. This Rodman, his name is Dennis McFerrin. He goes by the Cheyenne name of Sarah. He's the one who brought this medicine and this ritual to the people we know. And in his ceremonies, the amount of people actually eaten, as I said, is small, is little. It doesn't amount even to a whole peyote by person, might be like less than half. And also he follows a very disciplined routine, and we are aware that there are other traditions as respectable, of course, in which they eat higher amounts, so possibly there will be a different result. But as I'm talking about Sarah, I would like to give a quote by him, and which I think is true. He says always, "It's not how much you eat, it's how much faith you have in it."
Okay. So another question about, are there any possible alternatives to using peyote in the ceremonies, given political and ecological matters that have become so pressing?
Okay, this is a very good question, an interesting question, has many sides, but I'll speak for the interviewees, because we also are concerned, Mauricio, as an anthropologist involved in conservation issues, precisely about what the question is asking us. And we asked them what was their point of view about the peyote, if it came to be restricted, or it be banned from using it, or even it became extinct. What could happen then with the ritual? And the most experienced of them answered, different persons, but more or less, they said that it could be carried on without the peyote, and you don't need an alternative, because all the other elements, for them, it's more important the fire at the center, the tobacco, to smoke it and to elevate the prayer to God, to the Great Spirit, the water, the food. The peyote, they consider it just as a technology to open the emotions and connect with what is happening. So even people who have not eaten peyote and have been at Tipi meetings, they have exactly the same psychological effects as the ones who eat the peyote. So we don't even need a substitute. The Tipi itself, the meeting, develops into a spiritual connection, into a psychological connection, a community connection, and the ritual has its own power by itself. Of course, the peyote is a key that opens the heart and connects. But they don't believe in like using something else, like for them it's better nothing.
Los participantes son conscientes de que es una planta que tiene muchos años y que se debe de preservar, que su uso es muy importante, valorar.
And all of them, because we asked them also about conservation, of what they thought about it, if their ritual use might, if expanded, this meteor rituals expanded in number, would that be a threat to the peyote itself? And most of them consider that not, because they, of course, they all advocate for education, cultural change, legal protection, and all that we're doing here at this meeting of Chacruna. They all advocate for this protected areas to harvest it, etc. But they identify other sources of danger, which are very clear, because as they go to the countryside and see, for instance, climate change, there was a severe freeze 2 years ago in that area that burned enormous amounts of peyote in just one night. Just one night, and nobody had used it. It was in the land, and just it was a freezing night, too cold for the regular time of the year, and many peyote plants died just one night of cold, severe, extreme cold. And other are the changes in the use of the land, like for mining. There's a very real threat from mining companies that the same areas which are rich with peyote are also rich with minerals, and they are advocating to destroy those land and just take the minerals out. And there's now a struggle in the legal system because the companies have already bought the rights of the land, but at the same time, some resistance from ONGs and interested people and the Huichols themselves organized themselves and stopped this like 10 years ago, but there's still a threat, the possible destruction, but from other sources for economic profit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So one more question here about what are some differences you noticed, because you had so many people who improved, 85% of the people have improved. Any patterns or differences you noticed between those who improved and those who did not improve with the TP ceremony?
Well, I included in the not improved one who is a severe tobacco addict, and I don't think he'll ever stop smoking. And the TP is not designed for that. But the other two persons, if you see the table again, they have had only few ceremonies and have been attending for a short time in years, but they're in separate ceremonies. So it's possible that if they attended more regularly and for a longer period, they will also be asymptomatic.
Yeah.
One of the two are female. One is a bipolar 1, which is also a very difficult disorder. Mm-hmm. She has only attended 5 times in 3 years. And the other person had severe physical ailments, severe recurrent depression, suicide attempt, and she has gone into 4 ceremonies only in 3 years. So maybe it's the frequency and the intensity of the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a typical timeline of how many ceremonies when you start to see dramatic improvements? Have you seen any kind of pattern, or is it always different from person to person about how many ceremonies it takes for them to see symptom improvement?
This is a good question too. It's too small a sample, and it's like too random the collection, but there is an answer. There are like, let's say, like 2 patterns, like the religious conversion type. You know, like in the first ceremony, like wham, and everything changes, and the person now is devoted to the TP and becomes a member, and the change is constant after that. And the other kind is like the hard to, you have to be like biting them slowly, like they take like very long. They go like for a long time and no change is perceivable. But after a long time, then the change comes. Like in general, the subjects I've studied.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We're at time here, but thank you so much for that excellent presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to the next panel, but thank you so much.
Thanks to you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.